If you are able to some Ritesh, I don't know. Technically, you are, yeah. So recording is started now. So I was saying that this is a fusion of some courses like linear algebra, probability mainly, uh, and we are going to use a huge in this course. So the way I teach in the course will be more mathematically in a sense, right? So and the rest, the whatever we learn mathematical concepts, we going to implement it using a programming, right? So because this is an introductory lecture, I'm going to go very smooth in first 2 3 lectures, and then we will slowly dive into the mathematical details of it. If any of you feel difficult to follow, please let me know. Uh, right. So majority of the class, if don't follow that concept, I will try to repeat it. Right. Though there is a recording, but still, if you feel that it is needed to give me different perspective of the same concept, I will try to give you. Right. So generally, what is machine learning? It means like we have a data at our hand, and we try to find out some patterns into the data. And once we are able to detect the patterns, we are able to take a decision over those patterns. For an example, whether a given picture is having a face or not, right? So there is a specific pattern, right? There are two eyes, one nose, and hairs, forehead. So if these things are available, it means it is a pattern, right? So if your algorithm able to detect a pattern, then it take a decision. Here decision is in the terms of yes or no. So if the pattern is available in the image or a data, then you say you take a decision. Yes. If it is a classifier, you say yes, image is available. A person is available in the image. If it is a regression problem, regression means classification means like you have to find out, you have to choose one of the n classes, right? Let's say you have to, you are, the photo is given to you and you are able to you are asked whether there is a man, woman, child, or a animal in this. So there are four classes. Out of four classes you need to pick a one. So this is kind of a classification problem. The other problem could be like if I give you the, like he has your academic career profile, that he has done PhD or he has done MTech or he has done only BTech or he's just a 12th pass. So in that case, you need to predict what he will be the, what is his salary. So this is a problem where the classes are not available, but you need to guess a real number. So salary could be 20,000 or 20,000 1 rupee or 20,000 2 rupees, right? So how you do that, the data will be dumped to a machine will do some processing on it. It will try to find out a pattern, and once it able to detect a pattern, then based on that pattern it try to decide or take a decision. So this is what all machine learning is, right? And if I write it mathematically, what I always see, it may be biased, but the perception that I see machine learning or deep learning or reinforcement learning or any learning in the world, I see that mathematically they are trying to model one function in it, right? So there is a function. That function could be multivariate. Multivariate means that function output can have a multiple values, or it could be univariate. It can give you just a number, what is a salary, or it could be discrete function. The output could be discrete, whether it is a man or woman or girl, right? Or it could be binary, yes or no. So in machine learning, based on the data, we are trying to learn a function. How function and patterns are correlated, we will see slowly, right? So so mathematically, if somebody asks you what you do, so you are trying to model one function fx, right? So x is your data. You're trying to find out what could be the label of this x, right? If it is a classification problem, so you can find out only label when you know the function, how to map this x to a class, right? Fine. Okay. So machine, there are three type of learning, mainly supervised learning. In supervised learning, if you classify, if you want to further go into a detail, there are two type there are two type of modeling in supervised learning. What do we mean by supervised learning? If I give you few photos and I label them, those few photos, right? For an example, there is one photo and I say this is this photo. In this photo there is a girl, right? And I give you these such 100 photos and I always label them that there is a girl in it, right? And then I give you the second set of photos and I say that there is a boy in it, right? So what you have now, you are having a data set, a whole data set. In that data set there are some images and each image is labeled. Labeled means I have tagged them, that in this there is a girl, right? In this there is a girl. So I have labeled them, that I don't know where that girl is available, but yes, the photo, in this photo girl is available, right? Similarly, I have tagged some photos that there is a boy in it, right? So we assume that labeling is 100% accurate, right? Then only we can able to dig into the data, or we can able to find out a pattern, right? So there is a boy again here. So now if you have a data set which is labeled, and now somebody comes and give you a new photo and ask you, what do you think whether in this photo boy is available or girl is available? Because you had a history or you have a prior knowledge about a pattern of a girl or a boy in a photo, then you just give this new photo to your algorithm. This algorithm, because it had learned from the data already, it will try to find out that pattern, what pattern is available, whether it is corresponding to a girl or it is a boy. Then it will give you output. It is whatever, whether it is a boy available or girl available. So supervised learning means you are trying to supervise your data. You are labeling your data and tell you are supervising your algorithm. See, in this photo, the boy is available. Learn this pattern and see, every time you find this pattern, always say that there is a boy. So supervised means there is a label available. Once label is available, you can again try to classify the problem into two things: classification and regression. Regression means if I give you like height and weight, or if I give you the qualification, what will be the salary, right? If this is a qualification, what will be the salary, right? If it is a weight, what could be the height? So this is this on this x-axis, I can have x attribute, and corresponding to, let's say I have a height and here there is a weight. So if I say this is my x, right? So can you able to see the screen which I am doing on here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So if I give you this, that this is the height of a boy, and you need to tell what is the weight. So weight is a continuous attribute. So then you can depend upon your function, what you have learned. So here function is a line, right? I just told you in the first slide that I always see pattern as a function. So if you find out a function that is a line, say somebody gives you that this is my weight, new weight. So what, this is my new height. What could be the weight? What do you think? So based on the function, you see that this is my new weight, right? So you can predict it. So if the values are continuous, it is a regression. If it is a discrete, then it is a classification. For an example, if somebody gives you a height and weight, so here there is a weight and there is a height, right? So if this is a boy, it is having some weight, let's say 20 kg, and height is, let's say, 6 feet, right? So whether he can play a basketball or not. So then there is a function. Here function is a hyperplane, and below the hyperplane, let's say boys cannot play a basketball, and above the hyperplane boys can play the basketball based on like what is their height and weight. So if you give me this boy who's having weight here and height this much, it means 20 kg weight, right, and 6 feet height, then you ask me whether he can play a basketball or not based on this function which is given here, a hyperplane. Then you classify, no, he can't play a basketball because he's an underweight. But if you just take this boy here, the weight is, let's say, 70 kg and height is, let's say, 5 feet, right, or 5.5 feet, then you can classify, yeah, it is near to my boundary, but yeah, he can play a basketball because he is a strong boy, right? So in that case, you are just classifying based on your attributes. Attributes, what do you mean by attributes? So here in this case, my given x was a univariate function. Here I was just taking a qualification or a height only. My x was having only one value, so it is a height. But here in this left side figure, my x is having two values, so it is a kind of a vector where first value is height and second value is weight, right? So x can be a multivariate attribute. So if let's say I try to find out what I try to attribute a boy based on his hair color, height, weight, what he wears, from where he belongs, whether he wears specs or not. So I can keep on going with the attributes, and it can be a multi-dimension sample. So I can even tag a boy with 100 attributes, and I say that now in a class, if I want to show a student, then a student will be a 100-dimensional vector where each dimension will tell some specific characteristic of a boy, right? So just a minute. So do you understand this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Now the other learning, the second type of learning is unsupervised. So I don't know whether this figure suits to this example or not, but the simple is like if you give me a height and weight, and I need to find it out like how these are the population. This is the population of a college, right? And I want to bring some size, right, of a t-shirt, small, large, or middle, right? So in that case, I want to find out like how many t-shirts I want to bring it out. So I will try to cluster these population, and let's say I have 3 clusters now. One cluster is this, second cluster is this, and third cluster is this. Though they are overlapping, but it is fine. So the boy which falls somewhere here, he can fit into small or middle size, right? And the boy come here, he can fit into like large and middle size. So there can be overlapping. So based on like what clustering means generally, that we don't have a label, but we try to find out on our own what could be the pattern. Once you label one of the sample in that cluster, then you will automatically get to know what are the labels of other samples in that cluster. For an example, you just cluster these population into, you just clustered this population, and you find out there are 3 clusters, 1, 2, and 3, right? But you were not known like which is what. You don't know whether green one is a small one or a large one or a middle one, right? So even same for blue and red. But now some of the guy comes and tell you that one of a boy in this cluster is actually of a large size, right? Then all other boys, you don't have a problem to tag, and you just able to easily find it out that because it is a cluster and one boy is a large size, so all of the boys and all of the girls belongs to this cluster maybe is having a large size, right? So once you do a cluster, your further processing will be easy once you get a little information about it in the future. This is like a broad view or a future of unsupervised learning. Generally, what is found out when machine learning we started with like heavily on unsupervised learning, but gradually now as we have more computation power, people try to able to find it out that unsupervised learning is not helping us out, right? Because there is a computational limitation, you can't label everything in the world. And how humans learn is unsupervised, because when kid grows, he don't know how to communicate, right? When he is just a 1 year old or less than that infant, but he's learning on his own, and he is clubbing everything in his head. Once he able to communicate with the world, you just tag one of the thing in his head which he has already clustered till the age of 2. You label one of the thing, and all the things which he has clustered in his head, he label all the rest of the things with the same label, right? Like for insect, if it sees a ant or like all the crawling insects, you just find it out and say in general this is an insect. He will label everything what look like that same way. He said the kid will say that this is all insect. Then somebody sometimes he will mistook something as an insect, but then parent instructs, no, this is not an insect, this is a fly, right? And it doesn't crawl. So then he will just, maybe that labeling may, which parent may instruct may be wrong, but now he will able to find it out, though this is wrong but it is different from the one. And by gradually, since you are growing up at age of 12, 14, 24 and 32, you keep on learning all what you had information in your head, and you keep on learning and you are improvising that information based on your labeling whenever you get it. So what I'm trying to say here is that unsupervised learning is a new research field which people are very actively following it for. And they found out that 80% of the things which we do as a humans are like falling into this category, and it is better to explore directly for the unsupervised, though it is a hard job, right, to find out what are the patterns there. We will see. Like the third category is a reinforcement learning, and I don't think so I'm going to touch any of the thing other than this slide in this course. So in this reinforcement learning, you just have an agent and an action with the environment. So for an example, if somebody wants to, this is a agent, it wants to go, the goal is agent to reach here. So it takes an action whether to go left and right. So here he have two choices, whether to go here, left or right. Based on the action, you will have a reward. For an example, if you go this side, the reward in the future will be negative, right? And if it goes this side, the reward in the future will be positive. So you keep and hit and try doing the things with the environment. You keep on interacting continuously, and you build up policies, right? So this is a very active research field, and it needs a bit probabilistic nature to learn, but it is easy, I feel. And the only thing is that agent is interacting with the environment, and it will get a reward in either positive sense or negative sense. And every time it get a positive reward, it encourages itself to take that action again in future, right? So this is what people do in what we do in reinforcement learning. Fine. So this is just a general overview of what is supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. We shall be heavily doing supervised learning in this course. All right, until after midterm, I have 2-3 chapters where I will be touching these Gaussian mixture models and unsupervised learning for clustering. Then we'll touch it. Till 10th chapter, we will be having like supervised learning, and we will see all the nitty-gritty details of it. Fine. So any question till here? I think this is easy.
Sir, in the unclustered wala example, you said that we have to label one person as large, so the whole data can be clustered, the whole cluster can be labeled as large.
Right.
That labeling is an outside input, right? So how is it
Right.
entirely unsupervised? Like someone is seeing and telling it is large, right?
Right. So it is it is unsupervised till you are doing clustering. So clustering is not an easy job, right? So though I have put 3 circles over the figure here, but clustering can be, for an example, there could be this kind of clustering, right? These are the 2 clusters here. So you can't do clustering itself. So leave about that is a semi-supervised learning, which when I said that you just labeled one of them and rest of them is like you label the rest of them. It is semi-supervised learning. It is after it, right? Okay. So to reach that point, you have to do clustering, right? So clustering itself is a challenging job. That's what I meant to be. Okay. And I try to give you an advantage. What is the benefit of doing clustering is once you do a clustering, then you do some semi-supervised thing over it, and you will get a reward for everybody, right? This is what I meant to be.
Okay.
Fine. Okay. Okay. Now I will going to introduce one very small, very simple example, and I will be going to carry this example for the rest of the another 2 weeks. and I will teach every detail of it in terms of linear algebra and probability, distributions, decision theory, information theory. So we will be taking this one example and touching all these four different courses in a sense which is required for us, right? So let's start. So the here assumption is, I just told you that somebody comes and gives you a data point, right, data set, and ask you, and then he expect you, when he give a new value of x, you give him a new value of y. For an example, let assume that you don't know these blue points are generated from the sinusoidal signal, green one, right? Assume that you don't know this, right? So assume that this green signal is invisible for you right now, and you can see only these blue dots. So these blue dot is nothing but it is a data sample, one data sample, and it is having two values. It is a univariate sample. First thing is, it is a univariate sample. So here, if you give this x, right, you will give this t, target variable. So rather than saying y, I will be saying t. It is a target. So I am following Christopher Bishop here, pattern recognition, PRML in short. So every sentence that I'm going to speak in this course will be taken from the book directly, right? So I'm religiously following that book, page by page and sentence by sentence. So this is the first chapter of it, Christopher Bishop, PRML. So what I say that this is a univariate variable x, and if you give me this x, the value target variable will be, the value of this t will be this, right? This is only when you know the green function, right? But if you don't know the green function, then what? Somebody comes and gives you only these 10 blue dots. So this is your first sample. It means the label, the value of x is this, and the value of target is this, right? So this is t1. This is, let's say, t1, and this is x1, right? So similarly, that value of this dot, blue dot, for x is this x10. These are 10 samples, x10, and correspectively, the target value for this is t10, right? So every sample can be written as xi, right? So I can write it as xi, comma, ti. Ti means what is the target value for it, and xi means what is the input value for it. So now if I give you these 10 samples, blue dot, so it means you have a data set. In data set, you will have these 10 samples, x1, t1, x2, t2. Now a person can come and ask you, okay, what if I give you this x? If I give you this x, what do you think, what will be your t, right? So if I give you this x, what do you think, what will be your t? It depends how you see your data, right? How you dig the pattern into it. So a person can think, if this is a data, so one of your student can think that it may come up from this line, right? So this could be a function which could have generated it. Okay, so another assumption was like we have two assumptions here. So this data set, first I tell you how I generated this blue dots here. So we have taken a sinusoidal function. So uniformly we have taken 10 values from the x from between 0 to 1. So this is 1, 2, 3. So likewise we have taken 10x on the scale of 0 to 1 uniformly, and then we feed that x into a function sinusoidal x, sine 2 pi x, right? We feed that x into it and then add some random noise, right? Very small perturbation of Gaussian distribution. So Gaussian distribution means you add some noise between, you know, Gaussian distribution, right? Have you ever read Gaussian distribution? Yes or no?
Yeah, sort of.
Okay, for now I will explain it in future again. So for now, just think that you are adding some noise to it, some very small perturbation. So when you have taken some x on a uniform scale, so this is your target t from the function sinusoidal, then you add some noise to it. So that's why it is deviating from this green function, right? Similarly, you take this x, this is your target t here, but you add some noise to it, and this is your a deviation. For the same x, this could be your sample, but because of that noise, this sample is deviated from the green signal, and this is here. So not only that we have taken these samples from a function, but we have added some noise to it. Why we have added noise to it? Because it's reflect the real world things, right? For an example, you two are using some scale to measure, or some tool to measure a value, and that tool itself is having a bug in it, right? In that case, you are reading something that may have a biased value, and you may have an incorrect measure, but it in some sense it is giving some error, right? So that's why, just to reflect a real world situation, we have added some noise to it, right? So now this is a data set that is given to you, and somebody comes and asks, what do you think, what is the value of this x? It depends. What do you feel that what it could be the underlying function, true function, which could have generated these samples? Remember, from here onwards, you don't assume that you don't know that it was generated from sinusoidal function, right? So you can only see these blue dots, right? So once you see these blue dots and somebody gives say that, what do you think, if I give you this x, what will be the new t? So you randomly guess that this is the line which could have generated it. The other student can guess this is the line which could have generated it. The third person can think that this is a parabola which could have generated it. And fourth person can think that this is a concave function which could have generated it, right? So based on 100 students, 100 assumptions will come up, and they think that this data set could have generated by this function. And based on his assumption, he will take the different t's. For example, the student who thought this is a function, he take that this, for this x, this value is a t, right? You please stop me if you don't understand this. So the second person who thought of that this is a line, so for the same x, he will say, I think the value of this t is this. The third person which thought of this line, he said that I think the value of t is this for the same x. And the fourth person which think that this is a parabola, he say that I think the value of for the same x will be this, right? So here you can see the same x. People are predicting different target values. Why? Because they are coming up with different functions which they thought of that this is the underlying function which could have produced my data, these samples which is given to me. Because the only evidence that is given to you is these 10 dots, these 10 blue dot samples, and you are trying best, and you are using your head 100%, and based on your intuition you are coming up with your different underlying function. Based on the underlying function, when somebody asks a new value for x, you are giving that particular value, right? So this is just the same thing which I just shared to tell you in this slide. So if one person think that the underlying function is this line, the target value will be this, right? For this x, right? And if the second person think that this is the underlying function, then for the same x, he will think this is the value of t, right? So now this is what we had an assumption. We started with formation of a data set. We added some noise. Then we forgot that we have made this data set from a sinusoidal signal, and then we're trying to recover the underlying function. But there is no way to find out of that underlying function. Do you agree with me? Yes or no? Any one of you? Volunteer. So there is no way to find out this underlying function, because so what could be the best thing that you can do? if somebody gives you this these 10 dots, so what do you think what the best you can do now in this situation? Because you think you need to satisfy your evidence, which is your data set, and when you satisfy your evidence, then you need to predict a future value of x. So what do you think, what in general you can do the best on it in a given situation?
Latent trial.
What?
We can plot multiple graphs, and the data which has been given, we can compute what is the error, and then try to find out which curve gives the minimum error.
Right, absolutely. I think you have read this, right? So any other one? Anybody else?
Minimizing cost function.
Right, very good.
So
Anybody?
joining all points and see which.
Joining all points means like you want to join these points, or how you want to join these points?
So by straight lines, join all the points, sir,
Mm-hmm.
and then think of any similar kind of graph.
Right. So same this Rahul has said the same thing, right? So he just when he said that that he's minimizing the error. So that is we will discuss, not a problem. So anybody else, like what do you feel like how to come up with this thing? Okay, so what one of our student has said in a class that they will try different function. So let's say this is one function, then this is a second function, and then there is a third function, fourth function, and then they will try to minimize the error. What is the error here? Can anybody tell me?
For the value of x that is there, the value of the dot should align with the function. It is not, and that is the error.
Sorry, can you?
For any value of x, the value of y that is coming based on the assumed function, it should match up with the dot that are given.
Uh-huh.
If it doesn't, then the amount that is missing is the error, and we have to minimize.
Very nice, very good. Right, cool. So now if you say that these are the three dots that were given to you, and you think that this is a red function which could have generated it, so the error is how far your given target variable in a data set. So remember, these blue dots are a data set, right? So it is x1, this is x1 here, right? And this is t1, this is t1. So this is x1 t1, right? This is x2 t2, and this is x3 t3, right? So these 3 points are given to you. Now one of you might come and suggest that I think that these points are generated from this red curve, right? How good this curve is for them, then you need to find out what is the error. So error means in a data set t1 is given to you, but this curve is given this t1 corresponding for this x, right? So this was x1. In data set it is said that it is this t1, but your curve says that this is t1 hat. Because my curve is an assumption, I will say it is a hat, right? Or a prediction. So the difference between t1 and t1 hat is an error. So all these green, geometrically these green lines is a corresponding error for a corresponding sample, right? What could happen then? This, if it falls above the line, it is positive, right? If it is, you always subtract t1 from t1 hat. So you are subtracting t1 minus t1 hat, right? So if it is the case, then the points which lie above the line may be positive, and the points which lie below the line may be negative, and they can cancel each other in worst case. And you may say that the error is 0. Just to avoid that situation, you just take a square of it, right? Though you can take absolute value also, but for right now you just take, for simplicity, you take a square of it, so that cancellation problem will not arise, right? You understood, right? What is a cancellation here? Yes, you can type it. Yes or no? Do you understood what is a cancellation here? Can you type it in a window?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Guys, are you there or you are just having a breakfast? Yeah, cool. Very nice. Please respond in the chat box whenever I say. Okay. So the cancellation problem should not be there. That's why you are taking a square of it. For simplicity, right now, take this as a just for understanding. Now, this is your error. So what is a total error? Total error means there are 10 samples, and for every sample there you have error E1, E2, E3. You take a square of error 1, error 2, error 3, and just sum them up. So it is a total error, right? You are taking 10 errors, squaring up them and adding them up, right? So you are having 10 errors, you are squaring them up and adding them up. So it is known as sum of squares, right? So it is known as sum of square, right? This is what the guy, one of your other student is saying, that we want to minimize the error. So this is a total error which you want to minimize it, right? This is a crux of a learning. Is there any doubt in it?
No, sir.
Varun, Mahesh, are you clear with this? Because you were having some rough idea before that.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. So Sovik Das is asking, sir, why we are squaring the error? Okay, so I asked this question before when I said that, did you understand this? To avoid cancellation. So cancellation means, like, for an example, this may give you +5, right? And this may give you -5. When you add them up, it may cancel each other, but the error is still there. And when you add them, it is 0. So you may feel that it is a perfect fit. So the perfect fit is when to this point. So this is what.
Sir, but if we take modulus, that
Right.
would
That's
also
what.
solve this error.
That's why I have said that this is one way of doing it. So right now, just stick your head to the idea what I'm trying to give you right now. We will generalize it later, right? So the other is why half of the total error. So this half of the total error will I will explain it later. Right now, just ignore it because it will not give you anything. It is just a scaling factor, right? So you just multiply everything with 2, it just double it. You multiply everything with half, it just take a half of it. So it is a scaling factor. Just ignore it. Once I go for optimization thing in this course, then I will let you know what half is playing a role here. Okay, right, cool. So this is a crux of the learning when you know how to form an error function. When you know how to form an error function of any learning, right, whether it's a deep learning or any learning, and you're able to formulate it well, then you think yourself as like a intermediate guy who practice machine learning. The other part is how to minimize this error. That comes in a part of optimization. So what I've thought of, or what other people are trying to teach, or may not be quite relevant to the course, but I will touch that part also. So once you know how to formulate an error function, the second part comes how to minimize that error function. To minimize that error function, then the optimization theory comes into a play, and we will touch that also, right? So I think this with this I want to conclude my class. If you have any query in your head, just try to come up and try to discuss it in the beginning of the next class in first 5 minutes or so, and then we'll do it, right? So you just drop your attendance for now. So there are 105 students I can see. So you just please drop your attendance. I will calculate it and find it out. If you have any queries, please let me know in the beginning of the next class, or any suggestions are welcome if you feel so, but not very dramatic suggestions.